You know, when you go to bed and you say, God, take me now or get me well, and you wake up in the morning and you're still here.
What strategies have you found that work to have the doctors listening to you? Because, like you said, you've been through this for 12 years.
That's how he started the appointment. What would you like me to do? I said, I kind of don't get the question. If I knew what to do, I wouldn't be here.
Fighting for yourself is so important. I mean, I think there's so many people out there where it's like, I don't want to yell at the doctor. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to do this. And it's like, who cares? Welcome to Rarely Discussed, an American Porphyria Foundation podcast with your hosts, Andrew McManamon
and Nicole Castellano.
We have porphyria, a rare disease. Rare diseases differ greatly but share many similarities in how they affect our lives.
Being rare can feel lonely and isolating, but we're stronger together. Join us in meaningful interviews with porphyria and rare disease experts and the patients and families impacted as we connect, learn, and heal together.
We'll talk diagnosis, treatment, pain, mental health, managing daily life, and everything rare. Welcome to Rarely Discussed. This is episode number 8, and we have a very special guest, as we always do. So I thought, Nicole, you could take some time to introduce her.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. Today we are meeting Shelly Berman-Rubera from Newton, Massachusetts. And Shelly is the president of Small Business Results. She's an author and a sought-after speaker, an inspiring business development and communication strategist with over 5 decades of experience. You can find her at smallbizresults.com. That's smallbusresults.com. To say that she has been struggling with her health for the last 12 years would be putting it mildly. It's been a nightmare, as many patients, the same thing with acute hepatic porphyria. She's been living through this and continues to live through it. But her story is so similar to so many people. I never had met Shelly before. She had called into the APF and kind of explained what was going on. She had such a way about her to describe what she was going through, what she had been through. She is an advocate. She's a fighter. I could see that right away. And because so many people go for so long, like I did, getting diagnosed, she has just got diagnosed a couple months ago. And so this is really fresh for her. And Shelly, I'm so glad that you're here today to just kind of share your journey, and kind of, I call it purgatory, because that's what it felt like for me, that I went through just all that time looking for answers and just not finding anything, and doors being slammed in your face at every turn, to keep going through, fighting through to find the light. So thank you so much for being here today. And could you just start maybe telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe the symptoms that started this 12-year journey that you've been on, and now you've finally gotten some answers?
Yeah, and I really appreciate being here. When you're sick like this, or when people have life's events, the big goal is how can you share this? How can you help someone not go through this?
Right.
And I've always known that there was going to be a platform, someplace for me to have a voice without stopping my career or making it a full-time job. So I really appreciate it. It's actually very healing, right? We need to be heard.
Yeah.
So, and you're delightful. It's really very warm and welcoming. So it's been great. Um, I've spent hours till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, reading about porphyria, reading about symptoms on YouTube, looking at other people. And it's the first time where you can sit back and you're like, oh my gosh, that is what I have. That is really me, to the degree of your story and other women who have had hysterectomies when they've wanted babies and didn't need to do that. So, my heart. Um, and my studies have shown me that most of these unknown illnesses begin with an event. Some think that you can track back to some trauma, some stress, something that created a pivotal time. And so my short story is that my husband drank his way out of here. My mother, who I adored, had dementia and depression. I had 2 children. It's about 8 years ago. So and a dog that had congestive heart. She was coughing all the time, congestive heart failure. And I ran my own company. And I kept telling everybody, my brothers, this is too much for me. This is too much for me. I can feel it. It is too much for me. And really, the truth is, and this is a common story, my brothers did not help me with my mother. It was the whole thing. We used to call it the Shelly shitstorm. You know, like keep throwing it at me, keep throwing it at me. And I am strong, and I am strong.
It's,
However,
but you know what? When you're strong and capable, you jump in and you take care because you can.
and
And
because you have no
I don't
choice,
want to interrupt you, but it's just I totally know what you mean, because you can do it, but you can't do everything, so it's just I really hear you on that. I just
right?
wanted to
But
say.
also, when you're strong, other people. I mean, I went to an incredible meeting. They say when they see a strong person, it's like they put that thing in your arm. They're going to suck you dry. They're going to say, you can do it. You can do it. But I kept saying, I can't do it. It's too much for me. But no one listened to me. So I had been separated, saved my house from foreclosure, worked like a dog, wrote a book. My two kids, my daughter was a college athlete, never missed a game, traveled to Rhode Island 2 times a week, limping. But that was September to April, heads down. And on April, I said, oh my God, it's warm out. So I went out and sat, I live on a river. I sat on the dock with shorts and no underwear. And that's only an important part of the story because something bit my butt. So shortly after being out there, my feet started burning. My legs were burning until it finally became full body burning. So I had this thing erupt on my right buttock and went to the dermatologist. And that was only the beginning of over 100 doctors, where he said, yeah, I don't know what it is, but if it hurts you, we'll shoot it with lidocaine. 30 days later, I'm back. I said, this thing is killing me. He said, well, I don't know what we can do for you. One of the top dermatologists in Newton. Continued to every other month, another outbreak, another outbreak. I went to someone else and I said, whatever's on my butt is eating the nerve in my leg. I have a note that says, I've reassured her she's wrong. I wasn't wrong. Years went by, full body burning, still working, still dealing. And they did diagnose me with herpes 1 and 2. I did have I had a neck surgery. Nothing changed anything. And the burning got worse and the dysfunction got worse. Literally, we're talking about now 12 years, right? And I've been an athlete my whole life, a competitive dancer, athlete. I owned a dance school for 9 years. I was one of the first trainers on the East Coast. I owned a personal training company for 23 years.
Wow, you've done it all.
So I'm a true entrepreneur, 5 decades of running a business and 12 years of being sick. So I've been everywhere, ended up with a functional doctor out of Newburyport. And the guy is really, he's digging. I do have some cofactors of Lyme. They did find some mold. I do have the herpes. So here we are, literally over $450,000 that I've spent with acupuncture, massage, alternative treatments, supplements
Oh
to,
my.
right, working my whole life. And, showing up at work every day because we're waist up. They don't know, you know. And finally, he said, I'm going to test you for porphyria. It took me until I actually talked to you to even have some sense of what is it? How is it affecting me? And, you know, um, but this is what I have. And when you hear people 2 years in a wheelchair, dysfunction, pain, lying in bed saying to yourself, I want to live, but God, either get me well or take me now. This is too much for me. And I guess what else? I guess what's most important is that there is an answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this way. I'm anxiously waiting for relief. But I think the biggest issue for me is the way I've been treated and the way the medical profession has no forensic capabilities and no, like, if anybody ever said to me, you know what, we don't know, but I'm going to get someone to help you. They don't even have, I say, so who do you want to send me to? I get it that you don't get it. Where do I go? Most of these doctors say, I really don't know. So it's okay not to know. It's not okay to have the resources. And the thing that is hitting me lately, of all the doctors I saw, no one ever said, maybe you need to go to a hematologist. That's unbelievable. So no direction, lots
I
of
didn't, to be fair, my diagnosis was over 12 years as well. It's very similar. I feel like I'm listening. It's like you're telling my story.
yeah.
It's like, but yeah, I didn't even think about it either, that it wasn't until, and then until a hematologist did see me after 12 years that actually thought about it, tested it, and boom, there we were. It was a crazy story, but that's true. I never even thought of that.
And so my daughter's going to be 29. When I was pregnant with her, I had itching in my arm that you had to take a fork. It didn't matter where I went. I had full allergy. No one can, and actually people would say to me, you're in remarkable health. Everything else. I said to them, it's something about my blood. I said that to them 29 years ago. It feels like it's in the blood. No one listened to me.
Wow.
So it's a lot. I certainly was functional. I was a competitive athlete. I mean, all of that. But there were signs and symptoms of something a long, long time ago. And then, like you read about, there's triggers. It could be food, it can be the sun. And I've also told people, all of a sudden, my legs turn this incredible red welts all over my legs. I'm hot. Like even today, I'm hot. My live burning hot. So, and I'm having a reaction to something because this wasn't all here today. I don't know if it's that I'm hot, but I definitely am broken out with some weird rash. And so, what's the point? Guide me with some questions, but we need to learn how to advocate for ourselves. And we need to learn how to not accept the treatment. On top of being sick, to be treated like there's something really wrong. Have you thought about going to sports psychology? Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? I treat people like this. What are you talking about? And I'm told there's nothing wrong with my brain. And that's the other thing that's confusing. Many people have brain fog or they have exhaustion. I don't have any of those typical things.
Yeah.
In fact, I even wonder if the physical disability makes your brain even sharper. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's true. Not everybody has similar symptoms. There are some people that have acute porphyria that have never even had pain. It's just the neuropsychiatric symptoms, none of the visceral symptoms and stuff. So that's another reason why it's so hard to diagnose. Like, how have you kind of coped with the uncertainty all this time? You said you had all this go on with your mom, the divorce, you were working, you had your kids, they're in sports, you were not, all these things. How did that affect you? Because for me, not knowing what it was, I just kept thinking, I had this conversation today with another patient. If I just knew what it was, even if it was like a horrible terminal something, but I just wanted to know so badly because I knew something was wrong. But when I got the name, of course, that's where it kind of starts, because then you start learning what you're going to do, like this phase that you're starting to go through right now. But you know, it's how does that uncertainty? How did you cope with that uncertainty all this time up until now?
I think it's a really good question. So one is, I don't know where I got this skill, but when I see myself walking across the room with a walker, right, with a walker, I disassociate. I have no idea who that is. Certainly not me. It's certainly not me who got up and rode her life cycle 22 miles a morning or walked on the treadmill 4 or 5 miles a morning. Certainly not me. So there's a way in which I've disassociated. I'm not kidding you. That's not me. This is me. And I'm not going to accept this as my outcome. Now, not everybody can do that. That's one thing. There is something else that I teach and that I live by, which is called PMA, present moment awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is my head still on my shoulders? Do I still get up and go to work? Am I still me? I have to dig deep sometimes. I miss myself so much. But in the moment, I'm still functioning. I still love life. And I'm still committed to beating this. Not everybody's going to have that, but there are people like you and me and some of the people I've watched. One woman said, I was a spitfire. I was an athlete. There was nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And so, not everybody has. I mean, I had a great childhood. I have a lot of support. My clients love me. So you have a lot of reasons to keep going.
Well, what are your expectations now by the way, that's really interesting that you're like, that's not me. And I miss myself so much. I hear that all the time. And you know, what are your expectations now with now you know what it is? You've been fighting to find out what it is. What are your like as far as and the reason I'm asking is because I kind of when I first got diagnosed and then I started getting treated and I got a little bit better, I kept thinking about I want to get back to me, that person I was before I was sick. That before I was sick, before I was sick, before I was sick, before I was sick. And then I realized I was so stress was a big trigger for me. I'm like, I don't think I am going to be able to go back to that person. Do I want to be that person who took too much on, who did that? Like, so what are your expectations kind of like once you get treated and everything that, where you're going to be when you say, this is me?
So one thing is, I just want relief. I want relief from the pain. Um, that would give me a whole new lease on life, not to be in pain all day, all night. And when I say back to me, like I'm launching a podcast in October. Um, I have great clients. I have so much going on in spite of it. I love myself. I love my life. I love what I've built. I just want to do all that without pain and dysfunction. So I have little benchmarks. I can't really make it from my door to my car because I can't ambulate the getting the walker in the back seat. I want to go out on my own. I want to get in my car and I want to go. You know, I have a friend that lives in Ponte Vedra, Florida. I have a friend that lives in Austin, Texas. I have a colleague in Austin, Texas. I want to go to the Caribbean. I want to put on a bathing suit. You know, those are the things. I want to laugh. I want to go out with my kids.
Well, great. That's I really think I mean you're a trainer and you coach, and so I think that's probably helping you as far as if you were coaching yourself besides what you're doing, was there anything else you'd tell yourself? Sometimes what we say to others and what we say to ourselves are different.
I just know there's a whole other life for me. I'm ready. I'm just ready. You know, when you go to bed and you say, God, take me now or get me well, and you wake up in the morning and you're still here. Right? Well, that prayer didn't work. um, but what are you going to do? You face the day, put a smile on your face, and try not to burden anybody.
Another direction that I was kind of curious of is just taking it a different direction, I'll say, is for people who just mentally haven't really gotten there. And I know you're early on with this diagnosis too. So what would you say to somebody that isn't mentally there to prepare themselves? What would you say to somebody like that?
Mentally prepare themselves for
just being able to handle what life throws at them in a sense.
Especially when you're not feeling well.
You know, Andrew, I'm not a victim. No one's a victim. With cancer, they say, if not me, you. If not me, my neighbor. Cancer is a better diagnosis because you have cancer and we're either going to treat it or you're going to die. So when you have this diagnosis that most people don't know about, I don't know. I think it's just holding on to yourself and what the future can hold. And I'm not a victim. You know, shit happened to me. You know, being an athlete my whole life, eating well. Um, Even now, I've been so, you know, I still strength train every day, but I also have sat more than my life. And I do have 10 pounds on me, but I'm not gross or overweight or causing myself more damage by not moving. So I'm not a victim. Anything can happen to anybody at any moment, and it does. And people are shocked. They're actually frightened. Like, if this can happen to her, oh my God, you know, because I took such good care of myself, because I am so strong mentally and physically. But this is the unknown is really bad.
It's for me. It's the worst is the unknown, and I'm a very positive person, and I try to keep fear out of my life. I try to look at things, you know, even if something really bad happens, what can I learn from this or whatever. But the unknown is fear, and it's hard to let that creep in, right? You have to recognize it and, you know, kind of cope with it the way you did, or, you know, we all have to find our own ways to do that, you know.
Living, I mean, I really don't know, but I think to myself, I'm so grateful for my tenacity. I'm so grateful for who I am because really, if I didn't have this, I don't think I would have survived it. And I really am grateful that I strength trained and was an athlete because I really do believe that if I wasn't strong, I would be in a wheelchair. I would be in so much trouble. Really. It's that discipline, it's that will, it's kind of being prepared for whatever life throws at you. I mean, this illness is, if and mine's so multifactorial, it's not one thing at all. But I don't know, I say every day you have two choices. I could become an alcoholic, a drug addict, and a depressed, but I don't want to. I don't want to.
Of course not. As far as communicating to your doctors, getting them to listen to you, um it sounds like you know, you're kind of on a rampage right now. You're like, we before we started recording, you said, you know, I'm calling, my doctor has 100 patients, you know, I'm the only one that's worried about me. I always say that too, no one's going to advocate for you more than yourself because you know yourself the best. What strategies have you found that work to have the doctors listening to you? Because like you said, you've been through this for 12 years. So what works, what doesn't, in your opinion?
Well, absolutely. With fragmented or what you call segmented medical, right? Unfortunately, they don't know very much. They know what they know. You know, I had a neck surgery, and when I woke up, I said to him, "Yeah, you know, my rectum is, the pain is not to be believed." And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to deal with that sometime else." So I was in the hospital. I'm in agony. No, didn't say, "Let me get someone in here. How can we address that?" I expressed myself. I am in agony. Dermatologist, head of dermatology, Newton Wellesley Hospital. I'm sure he's not there anymore. I went in, he said, uh, "What would you like me to do?" That's how he started the appointment. "What would you like me to do?" I said, "I kind of don't get the question. If I knew what to do, I wouldn't be here."
Like, I want
What
to
do I
find out
do?
what I have and what to do to
I
get
said,
better.
"What do I do? I have a herpes outbreak every other month. It's altering my life." He was so cruel and dismissive. I actually Oh, and he said, what about Lyrica? What about gabapentin? I said, yeah, I can't take that shit. Sorry for my mouth, but that's what I said to him. This moron wrote in my medical records, patient says she won't take that shit. In my medical records. I wrote him a letter saying, you may know about skin, but you know nothing about human beings. I highly suggest you take a course in emotional intelligence and empathy and put yourself in your patient's shoes before you repeat in a negative way something that I said or to dismiss what I'm saying as not true. So, me, go ahead, bring it on. I'll fight you right back. Your behavior is absolutely inappropriate, right?
Yeah.
I tried to find it. I have a document I've kept, literally, based on what doctors have said to me. I
How
think
does that how does it feel? How does that feel when you're there looking for help? And then you know, not only now, like you said, if you don't know, you don't know, right? If a doctor doesn't, you know, they're either willing to learn a little bit about it or to refer you out, or you know, just to, you know, if they don't know, and it's okay that they don't know. It's rare, you know. You know, it's expected that most doctors aren't going to know about it. But being treated like that
over
is
and over and over
unacceptable.
again.
And
Unacceptable.
did it make it harder for you to keep fighting? I mean, I know you're very strong, but I mean, we even talked with Dr. Smith, right, Andrew, about this, like that. How do most patients keep going? You know, when they keep being treated like that, a lot like a common things are, and I'm not saying that this happened in your story, but you know that they're hypochondriacs or they're drug seeking or it's in their head.
Well,
Um,
so Nicole, I think really years and years ago, like when I was a little girl, doctors, we had them on a pedestal. They were like God. They had the answers. We believed all we had to do was go to them, right? And as medicine has become fragmented, they don't have the resources, they don't have the articulation. They're completely overworked and exhausted, and they're missing people skills. Empathy, empathy. And it's like, well, like, next, I can't help you. Next, what about you? Oh, let me write you a prescription. Okay. If we don't do what we're doing, like with the Porphyria Foundation, educating, 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 getting our voice out there, we have little hope of making change, but at least, and actually, I have a dear colleague who is a functional doc. She was treating me during COVID because they could interstate. She can't now. But for the first time, she said to me, any article I find, she says, send to me, send to me. And then she said to me, I really am curious because I think one of my young kids, my patients, she's a pediatrician, has porphyria.
wow.
Okay. In that instance, she never heard of porphyria. She's a brilliant doctor. She never heard it. So just my being her friend and talking about this illness allows her to think, well, maybe let's test. Let's test.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to answer your question other than their behavior is unacceptable. So I want to lighten it up, sort of lighten it up. I'll tell you something that happened. During this porphyria with all the sitting, something happened to my joints. So now, on top of everything else, they tell me I need my hips replaced. And not one, but two.
Ugh. And surgery is a trigger for porphyria.
So on
Yep.
February 27th, I had my right hip replaced. On May 7th, this is in the last 5 months, had my left hip replaced. I'm still here. It was not easy. However, after the first hip was Monday, Tuesday afternoon, I went home. Took a painkiller, went to sleep for 6 hours. I was fine. Woke up Wednesday morning with blood everywhere, pouring down my leg, on top of everything else. So I call them and I say, I'm bleeding. I had to get in a wheelchair car, go back to the doctor's office, where to find out that they didn't close my 7-inch wound properly. And the top of the wound was open about this much. So now I'm in the doctor's office by myself because everybody works. What are you going to do, right? And they put a wound vac on it. I come to find out that, anyhow, they put the wound vac. I'm home with 2 weeks with my illness, with my hip, with the wound vac. The porphyria, now that I'm thinking, something made me so sick I couldn't tolerate it. Could not tolerate it. No one would help me. I went to the emergency room. I want to paint this picture of our healthcare
In
system.
what way were you sick?
The pain, my whole body. I can't even express to you. Could not take the pain. Couldn't take another Dilaudid, and I don't do drugs well either. Like literally could not take the pain from head to toe. So I go to the emergency room, and then I have an ambulance come get me. They put me in the hallway for 13 hours. In the hall, no room. Other hospitals have closed, so everybody goes to there. 13 hours. I then get admitted. There's so many things that happened that were wrong that the head nurse calls the head of patient management to come in and talk to me. Now, I didn't call patient advocacy. They did. They pulled me into a meeting, and I told her, I can't get the guy on the phone. He did a bunch of things in terms of a humane perspective that were not okay. Didn't own what happened to me. They ended up firing the guy that does the closings of the surgery. And I kept saying, it's nobody else's responsibility. You're the surgeon. Are you kidding me? They called him under the bus. They forced him to get a new office manager. Wait till you hear the story. So now I go back to and he had come in. I would never have had you go to the emergency room. I said, and this is another huge thing. Every time you call and you say, I am in so much pain. Well, if you're in that much pain, you better go to the emergency room. I said, okay. I go to the emergency room and they look at me. The head of the emergency room had the guts to say to me, right? What are you doing here? This isn't emergent. You've been dealing with this for years. I swear to God, what are you doing here? So they tell you to go, but they won't treat you. Anyway, they call him under the carpet. I go back for my follow-up, and he is ripped. He says, do you have any idea what you did to me? Do you have any idea what you caused me? Like really confronted me. They did this, they did that. I don't know that I can treat you. I don't know that you're not going to do that to me again. Now talk about strength. I looked at him and I said, who did what to whom? My wound was open. We didn't know anything about porphyria. I did not have treatment. You didn't send me home with enough pain medication, and no one would call it in for me because it was the weekend and we're worried about addiction. I'm not an addict. I don't even like drugs. You wouldn't give me pain medication. Make a long story short, I handled myself in such a way that at the end of the meeting, he gave me a hug. He gave me a hug. And when I went back to him, I think the next follow-up, I actually bought him a book called EQ Applied, Emotional
I
Intelligence.
knew it was going to be about emotional intelligence.
And the nurse, his PA, she had confided to me about her brother's addiction. I brought her a book about addiction.
Wow.
Wait, there's one last piece to this story. I'm at PT the other day, and across the room is this. He's very handsome. This man says, "Hey, how are you?" Big hug and kiss, my surgeon. And I said to him, "What happened with the book I gave you?" He said, "That was hilarious." The entire office was laughing, and when I brought it home to my wife, she said, "She got your number already."
She's like, thank God.
She said, "My wife was really." And so, go back to what you asked me. People need to learn. He was very appreciative. Anybody that knows that story says you taught him a life lesson. A life, it's not about you and your surgery. It's about me, the patient that's bleeding all over her sheets, right? So what's the point of what this whole story? We have to learn how to stand up for ourselves. We have to learn that if we don't advocate and not accept bad behavior from anybody, husbands, children, doctors, if we don't put a stop to that, and not everybody has that strength, they don't. And maybe that's why the podcast that you're doing can help them. But no one's going to fight for your life the way you do. No one. No one. Except I'm really grateful for this doctor. He's forensic. He's digging. How else would he have ever come up with this?
It's great. It's great that it happened, but it's also you go, well, it took. I said the same thing. I'm grateful, and I was like, I'm grateful because I almost died, so I'm grateful for every day. And whenever I get really stressed, I go, hold on a second, back it up. You could not be here right now. But it is very, no matter how positive and how strong you are, is very frustrating that there are so few doctors willing to dig or to refer you to someone who wants to dig, or you know what I'm saying, to try to get that instead of just saying, what do you want? Write the prescription, there you go, like you were talking about earlier.
Well,
So
no, listen. Listen, someone says they are in agony. Why are you in agony? Why are they in agony? Keep testing, do whatever you have to do to get to the ask someone else.
yeah,
I mean, this particular doctor, he's very, very active. He, I am the investigator. I started to read. I need relief. I really need relief. I'm sure we all do. And so I found something like lidocaine or procaine injections, IV. And the next thing I knew, my other doctor friend said he was in a forum asking about IV procaine. So if he didn't think of that, I did.
wow.
So I don't know what else to say except that we have to have a voice. And I think meeting you, I just felt seen and heard. I really did.
I know the feeling. Andrew knows the feeling. Everyone listening to this knows that feeling because
And Andrew, you have porphyria too?
Yeah, I have acute intermittent porphyria. Yeah.
And how does that show up for you?
So it's interesting because I've gotten to a point where I think I told you, Nicole. I think I'm 2+ years without an attack now. So
oh wow.
I've it's been interesting. I've been really analytical and data centric and really looking back at my past to see what's been triggering everything. And of course, like you said, Shelly, back to something has to trigger this. There's got to be something. And I figured out everything that has caused my attacks after that initial one, and I've never been able to figure out the initial one. But for me, my attacks have always just been just this one big one that has happened every single year for the past since 2018. So it's been interesting because I'll be hospitalized for 7 days and go through the panhematin and do that whole thing and have to, get 20 pounds back that I lost. But now I focused on nutrition, fitness, not getting worked up too much, and then here I am 2+ years later.
So what does an attack look like for you?
So it's actually came in a couple different forms each time. So I've gotten the lower back pain, like where you feel like you've just really pulled your back and it hurts to breathe. I've gotten that part before, and that was an interesting experience to have because I thought maybe I pulled it, went to chiropractors, went to doctors, but nothing happened. Just to think, I knew I had porphyria. It's got to be probably something with that, and sure enough, an attack. Usually, the abdomen for me attacks me pretty quickly. It's just one of those things where I know Nicole. We've talked back and forth about my stupidness about breaking all these bones, and I would take broken bones over porphyria any day. Uh, it's one of those few pains in life that brings you down to your knees, and it's not something that you can really wish on anybody for sure.
One thing, Andrew, I wanted to say one thing really quickly. Andrew, Andrew has a video out that he did a couple years ago, and he talks about that this disease can swallow you whole, and that he's let it swallow him whole. I just spoke to another patient the other day who's also a guy, and he said the same thing. I feel like this is swallowing me whole. So you might be getting some someone asking you about that, but it does feel like that. No matter how strong you are, you get to those points where you feel like that, right? Where you're just like it's you know it's hard.
Well, Shelly put it beautifully. It's just you're not a victim, you know. At the end of the day, you just can't be in that victim spot. I
No.
mean, you, nobody. Yeah, it's just one of those things where you can really let it swallow you whole, like we've said, and just you can think all these things. It's a domino effect. You think the worst, everything sucks. I hate my life, and it just goes back to the EQ. You got to really focus on that. Be aware, be grateful, and go from there. So.
Yeah.
And advocate for yourself. I mean, I'm not really angry. I would say I'm just so grossly disappointed. Just grossly disappointed. Not that I haven't done well. Not that I'm just as a dancer, a gymnast, just my I guess two of the core things about me, my coping skills from a little girl, is moving, hula hoop, rollerblade, ice skating, like never ever stopped all the way through my adult life. And my other coping mechanism is reading. I just love reading and learning. And it's hard for me to get comfortable. I still read, but not in a way where you just dive into a book and the world disappears because I'm uncomfortable. My rectum hurts, my back hurts. Just want to get back to the things that have sustained me.
It's good that you're still doing it even though you're not enjoying it as much, because you're not giving it up, just like you're not giving up on anything else. You're doing it, and I'm sorry that you're not being able to enjoy that. I found myself, instead of, I used to read too, and I had insomnia really badly, so I would just be up for like 2 days, and I was just, I it took, but my brain wasn't really working right, so I would sit there and look at a page. I don't know if I was looking at it for 5 minutes or an hour. um but one thing I did do is go into just research. Like every time I was in the hospital, I'd just be like on my phone, on my computer, just like trying to learn more about porphyria. Like I would get not mad, well, kind of, I'd be like, I I need to find more out about this, because the more I know, the better I'm going to be. And that's something that Desiree Lyon, who founded the APF, she says that those who know the most do the best, and that is true. But I found that was one of my coping things, like just learning about it, because knowledge is power. We learn that, and I do believe that. And I like Andrew. I'm definitely have an analytical way of doing things. I like to analyze things. I love data. I love trying to figure out how things happen, looking for patterns, things like that. So I think that's something every patient should do. But it's not always easy to do when you're in the thick of it. It's impossible. So
And
it's
you reminded me something. I had my babies a little later in life, and I went to this doctor. And I'm a reader. I'm a researcher. You're gonna have a baby. What does your body need? How do you prepare? What do you need to do? So I said to him, I found a study out of Britain. I'm trying to think of what the remedy was that you need to take. I can't remember. It'll come to me. X to prevent neural tube defects. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
mm-mm.
Um, it'll come to me. So I said, what about that? And he looked at me and he said to me, Shelly, you read too much. And guess what happened? I had to terminate a pregnancy because the baby had a neural tube defect. I asked about it. Was it folic? It's folic acid. It's folic acid. If you
Okay.
read folic acid, the lack of folic acid can occur in neural problems with babies. I asked him. He dismissed me. I blame him. I swear to God, to this day, I blame him. There's no excuse why you wouldn't say to someone that brought that, why would you condemn them for reading? Why not say, you know what? I haven't heard of that. Let's look into it.
Right.
And for me today, I would have just taken the folic acid. I wouldn't have waited for the doctor, who's not a God's opinion, right? Uh,
Yeah.
I think
Now, of course, that's totally known for
now
prenatal.
it's known for everything. Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So I really do
So
think
sorry
that,
about that.
thank you. It's unbelievable. You keep saying to God, okay, what's the lesson here? What's the lesson? Because guess what? I think I've learned it. Whatever you wanted to teach me, I got it. I got it. Let's move on. I think the big question for me becomes what happens if I don't get better? Because I really want to get better, but what happens if I don't? This is really not quality. I've made my life quality, but I don't know how much longer anybody can live in this kind of dysfunction. I really don't. That's the, if I'm not even afraid of it. I just feel like if I don't get better, something's going to happen because now, for the first time in my life, I have high blood pressure. And now I read porphyria can cause high blood pressure, correct? Yeah.
The it's kind of what I was getting at a little bit earlier. It's like when you said that we spoke and you said I felt heard. That's what happened when I found out I got diagnosed. I know Andrew and everyone listening is probably sick of me telling this. I tell all the time, but I read this. The only thing that was I was diagnosed in 2006. The internet isn't what it is today. And my mom found this book called Porphyria, the Lion's Share of Trouble, written by Desiree Lyon, again, the one that founded the APF. And she had written that book. She thought she was dying. She wrote it. She was sitting there at NIH in the library trying to find stuff about porphyria. She couldn't find it. And she's like, I need to write this down. I need to be the one that's going to do this. And she wrote it really quickly. She's like, oh, it's not a good book. I wrote it really quickly and stuff. And I said, that book saved me because when I read it, I was the same thing. I was like, that's almost exactly what happened to me. And I felt validated. And I thought, first of all, when I had first gotten diagnosed, I kind of asked, like, well, what does this mean? Do you have some treatments? Like, what's the cure? Is it a month, 3 months, a year? Like, what's the deal? And they said, we don't know. It's possible that you would have to do this treatment and you may be feeling like this for forever. And I was like, well, that
That
doesn't
can't
sound
be.
good. It's not going to turn me off from trying and trying to be positive about it. But when I read the book, and I heard this woman who had the same thing I had, and it was so similar. Um, I thought to myself, well, good. Now I know it's possible to get better. I don't know when. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know it's possible. And if it's
Yeah.
possible, I'm going to that's where I'm striving. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm just going to just one foot after the other and do everything that I can. And I said to myself right there, I said, when I get better, because I know I can get better, I'm going to share my story so other people, because I knew how much hearing her story had helped me. And I think that's why it's so important for our whole community on Facebook. We have, like 10,000 people in our support groups, and we not everyone's there all the time. We lift each other up. There's something about having that support and hearing from other people and looking how your life is going to be. And so going back to what you said about what if I don't get better? Um, I think that once you go through what you're doing, what Andrew said about, going back and analyzing what those triggers are, maybe even a lot of patients keep diaries now with their attacks, like what happens. And like, then they can say, oh, every time I do this, this happens. When you do get treatment, it took, well, I want to ask you about that too, because you did start getting treatment. It took a long time. You've just had your first shot of Givlari. But, you may never get back to being the same. I didn't ever get back to being the same. But what I've learned through it, patience. I'm not a patient person by nature, and but there are a lot of lessons that you can learn, and I feel like Porphyria and going through this horrible thing that I went through, that we're all going through, you do get some life lessons that are good for you. Besides patience, self-care, loving yourself unconditionally. All my accomplishments were tied up in all my self-esteem was tied up in my accomplishments. So when I couldn't do anything, I felt like a loser. I felt like I'm like, who am I without? If I can't do something, then who am I? Who am I? And so a lot of healing and self-care and self-love kind of came from that. I still struggle with it because it's whenever you want to do something, you're not feeling well and can't do it, it's frustrating, and I'm hard on myself. But I think that what that'll look like for you, since you have all these coping skills, you've got support, you know what the treatments are, you're smart, you've had all this coaching training, that you've been training for this your whole life. So I think you've got a great chance at having the life that you want to have. And it may have some hiccups, like Andrew's gone to 2.5 years without an attack. I think it's hard. I have a friend who this month 3 years without an attack, no treatment. It's possible. But then some people, it doesn't get much better. So it's hard to say. And I think your mindset has a lot to do with it, and your skills to get through it. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of say that. I'm sorry this turned into more of a diatribe, but I think you're going to make whatever that looks like, you're going to make that happen. And if you can't do stuff, it's not because it's because you really can't. And all you can do is your best, right?
Number one, I don't want this to define me. So even doing this show was a risk for me because my clients don't know. I show up energized, waist up. You're not going to know. Um, I am definitely, I don't really feel like I have attacks. I don't really. So I say to myself, my God, what if I don't have this? So the genetic testing is really important to find out, to what degree do I have it? What kind do I have? It's really important. And the other is that if we don't, so after I spoke to you, you gave me a lot of hope. Hope comes from realizing that this didn't just happen to you, um, that there are other people going through it. Yeah, I am not a victim. But the thing that also worries me, after I spoke to you, I immediately called him. I'm also very lucky. My doctor gave me his cell phone. Like, no doctors do that, right? So I can text him. But I called him and I said, it's urgent. We have to talk. And I told him about the panhematine. And I said, it's really important. I was talking to Nicole. She said ABCD. And when I spoke to him, he said, I don't know how to get it. I said, she'll help you. She will help you. She knows that that's an issue. They're dealing with it. And then when I talked to him again, he said, I'm not comfortable prescribing it because I don't really know anything about it. I can't promise you results. And so I think the lack of education for the doctors, like you said, you don't need one, you need both. But he said no. And that frightens me.
Well, I think the fact that he's trying and learning, I don't know if it's as big of a problem, because our last episode that we have is Dr. Roy Smith. He's in Philadelphia. So he's not super close to you, but they're experts that we have on our scientific advisory board, that they're willing to talk to doctors that do have a patient for the first time, or even if they've had other patients, they run into something that is just hasn't happened to them before. They don't know what to do. That's the best thing. Even Dr. Smith, remember Andrew last week, he's like, I don't know. And like doctors, it's kind of surprising that, you're an expert, you're saying, I don't know, but that's great, because then you can find out. So if your doctor's open, there are doctors out there. I can't do that. I'm not a doctor, but we can connect him with someone to kind of consult. Maybe Dr. Smith can talk to him and give him that information. And
So
coming
is
from a
Dr.
colleague,
is
not
Dr.
from you.
Smith a Porphyria expert?
Yeah. Yeah, and there we have a couple different experts that we can have your doctor talk to and kind of walk them through and how to order, when, why, what, all the questions, whatever. I don't know what his questions are, but whatever they are, they have an expert guide them, and they love it. Nothing more than a doctor who's new that wants to learn, because it's creating awareness. And like you said, just having that conversation with your functional medicine doctor, you're like, well, she's like, well, maybe someone else has it. Having these conversations is paramount. And doctors that do know, supporting other doctors, it is huge in this community, because they know that there aren't a lot of doctors out there. So it's a huge bonus for you and your doctor. And we'll, when we get done with this, we can talk about it. You can give me a call later tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. But we're so lucky to have the doctors that are passionate about it. They want to help other doctors learn and do it right. So it's very exciting.
That's great. And I think that, what you're both doing is just crucial. Our country has an epidemic proportion for mystery illnesses,
Yeah.
undiagnosed mystery. I think there's someone told me there's a new Netflix series about it as well. But I guess the other point that two things that people have said to me that really bother me, um, something like, well, this is the story you tell yourself. As if I told myself a different story, that I could get myself better. There's people like Dispensia and a
Joe
number of
Dispenza,
people,
yeah.
Joe Dispensia. So there's a number of profound, and you can't even believe the books. There's someone that broke every vertebrae in their spine, and they willed all the vertebrae to, I think it was him, actually, Joe Dispensia. So,
Yeah.
I can lie in bed and I can say, sacrum, be well, or, thoracic spine. I can even mentally go through and connect with each part. But I'm not getting better, because what I have is not just mind over matter. Functioning, living, getting up, being happy, and finding joy anyway, I am in control of. But relieving the pain,
I just got
getting
chills.
the inflammation, I don't have control,
Yeah.
right? But at least what you're doing provides some information. Education is key.
Yeah, and
It
that's
is.
something that I've realized too, and I know we talked a little bit about it too, Nicole, about this other situation we've had to advocate for, with girlfriend having her dad having leukemia and us having to advocate for him. And
Mhm.
really, I probably wouldn't have known to do that if it weren't for Porphyria and just seeing how the hospital scene was. Because like you said, when we grow up, we put these doctors on a pedestal when they're just human beings too. Maybe they weren't taught it, but of course there's another line of them having the willingness to even want to. And it's so easy just to go into a hospital now and know right away, you're like, this person is not for me, this person's not going to do it. And it's just so easy to see that, because and that's what we're facing now. Is I'm just kind of voicing this concern of just needing to question every decision that everybody makes in there, and just doing the due diligence on our end and doing our research, because it is ridiculous. It's just crazy. I mean, all these diseases that people are dying from, the epidemic you said of all these different diseases that are coming out of nowhere. I mean, you can't even eat food anymore. It's just, yeah, it's a domino effect that's ugly.
And that's actually something I taught nutrition for 23 years.
Is there anything you haven't done? I
I've done a lot. I've done a
know.
lot. I'm,
I'm not laughing. I admire that. I think it's amazing. It's just
yeah, I'm a
great.
serial entrepreneur. But what I was just going to say to you,
I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
so, no, no. So I just had this conversation with someone. In today's world, it's so convoluted. Should we eat bananas, or they're too much sugar? Should we eat a tomato, or is that inflammatory? Literally, we don't know. We don't know what is right or not right. And I follow Dr. Berg, Dr. Mercola, someone else too. Oh, don't eat pea. You can't have. I love peas, right? A baked potato with peas on it could be a good dinner for me, right?
Mhm.
Now I'm listening to this guy. I don't really like him. I can't think of his name. Don't eat peas. They are the worst vegetable. Like, what am I eating that you would say okay? And so I think the lack of knowledge about even what to do, along with what you said, Andrew, the quality of the food, right? It is, we need education.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think there's another side to that too, because not only do we just not know, I think this world has been so tech driven and it's just all about social media these days. And people will say something just way in left field just to get more views, but it's giving this false impression on what's good and what's bad. I mean, I could just be over here and be like, yeah, apples are the worst thing in the world, don't eat them, or whatever it is that people just think that are these superfoods that are good for you, but they're doing it for views and they don't really care what this value that they're giving or the lack of value they're giving is actually doing to people.
And go ahead and put in your feed that you have neuropathy. Oh, you should see my phone. I think the work you're doing is really important. Do you have a list of Porphyria medical people on your website?
We have our scientific advisory board members on our website. But as far as the one of the things that the APF does is they'll find doctors in your area for you that we have in our database. We have over 6,000 doctors in our database, and varying levels of experience. Some doctors, we don't know how much experience because their patient has said, "Hey, my doctor's awesome. He treats my porphyria." You know, and then there are people that have 40 patients and they've been doing this for 50 years, and they're just on it and everything like that. But we do have this list, and what we do is we we just provide that to patients. They call and they give us, their zip code, and we just give them some doctors that are closer, or we refer if they have a physician that wants to learn like your doctor, we can refer them to, get them to consult with an expert and things like that. So we don't have it on our website, and one of the reasons for that is some doctors have been contacted, and just
It's too
they
much.
just get tons of calls, and they can't handle it and everything. So they just ask us not to just put everything out there. But yeah, but they all want to help. But like you said, they don't have time. Last week, or last episode, Dr. Smith, the expert I was talking about, he said that, his colleagues applaud him for taking as much time with the patient as he needs. And then, but the institution is kind of like, you could have seen two patients during that time. So and I think, Shelly, you said that earlier, that they don't have enough time. They don't have enough resources. It, unfortunately, it's a business. It's a business, and some doctors have a really good balance between doing that, and maybe if you're an expert and you're really high up and you're able to do that. But maybe if you're just out of medical school and you do your residency and you're not, you don't have, you're expected to do certain things to kind of get to that point where you can do that. You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely, I don't know the answer, but
But
it's
if we had doctors listening, I'm going to use myself. I'm a business and communication strategist, right? So I help people with content on their website, but I'm not a web developer. So I have a website, I talk to a client, I say, so I can help you with your messaging positioning, but if we need a website, we're going to call so and so. I have someone that can do search engine optimization. I have someone that can do whatever. So my job, and people have hired me because of my resources, because you're never going to walk away and say, she sent me who? Right? I have researched, I have built relationships. I believe that the number one responsibility for doctors is, if you don't know it, that's okay. It is not okay not to say to a patient, don't know, can't help you. You need to look at me as a human being. You're sick. I'm sorry you're sick. Let's get you some help.
yeah.
And I have a hematologist, I have a dermatologist, I have this, I have that. You reminded me of a dermatologist that I had gone to so many times because of the herpes that they finally told me they didn't want to see me anymore. They didn't want to see me anymore.
For what reason? They didn't
Didn't
give you
have the answers, didn't want me to come back. I'm a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. Seriously. No resources. So I agree. Segmented medical care. Then get your gosh darn Rolodex filled with, Rolodex is an old term. Get your file, get your Google file loaded.
Andrew, do you even know what a Rolodex is? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
Yeah, he
looking it up right now. I'm just kidding.
Google it. But seriously, don't just wash your hands of it. We're human. I say that. The two things I see. I am a human being above and beyond porphyria, herpes, mold, Lyme. I am a human being who's suffering. When I
Yes.
cry, and I allow myself to cry, I don't like to cry publicly. I don't like crying. My mother cried all the time. When I cry, it makes me feel like I loved her. She's amazing. But the crying is really hard. So I cry in private, and I cry until I can't cry anymore. Could be hours of crying in my own bed by myself. And then I have to go on. But you're lying there crying, screaming to the universe, help me. I need help. So
Well, I think that's really important that you said that, because throughout this whole thing we're talking about, and it shows, I don't need to say it, but we're talking about how strong you are, what a good advocate you are, what a good communicator you are. Even took a situation with the doctor, flipped it around where you're, hugging, and honestly it was the hospital too that kind of brought everything in. You didn't even really start that, but it's also good for people to hear you say, I also have to lose it. And just however you do that, you, whatever that means for you, it's different for everybody, but crying has a lot to do with it. But thank you for sharing that, because sometimes people don't like to admit those things, and they just go like, and then some people watch and they go, oh, I wish I was strong like that. I cry, and that makes me feel weak. You know what I mean? And
let me say,
but
I
it's
can
just
go all I can go all day, deal with my printer not working, deal with whatever, right? And then when I'll go to get in bed and I can't reach the charging cord, then I'll cry. Or I'm in bed and I really don't have the bandwidth to get up and I'm hungry, right? I even moved my bedroom downstairs and I think the kitchen's only over there, but oh my God, I don't want to get up and have to deal with the walker and whatever. Those are the times I lose it. You know, it's the day, but then there's one last thing at the end of the day where you just can't cope anymore. And then I started crying, and I think I can't cry because my eyes will be all swollen. I have a podcast to do tomorrow, so I stop this. But yeah, I mean, both of you. It's just everybody has their own journey. One would hope that what you're doing, and I'm happy to support you both, is by talking about it, gaining visibility. I'd really like to think about how we could do something where we invite some doctors into a meeting like this and educate, you
yeah.
know, just get some education going.
There are a lot of things that are done, and I feel like I've brought up Dr. Smith like 5,000 times, but I know that uh, that the Recordati who makes panhematin, they do have educational things where they speak about not the medication, but just the disease, and educating other doctors that want to learn about it. They have question answer discussion sections. Dr. Smith is one of the people that does that, and they have these uh these meetings together without patients, just by themselves, so they can concentrate on that. And we do, so it is being done. A lot of that we isn't out there, but it is being done. And I have to say, it's awareness and education. You are right, it is the most important thing. And everyone in this now that you're just kind of new to our community, but you'll find out it's on every level, the doctors, the nurses, nurse practitioners, patients, caregivers, just friends, loved ones, just anybody, just being a friend and taking time to listen to somebody. But the doctors can do that for themselves. It's just, we're a very tight knit community, and without that, I think it would be a lot more difficult. But also, we are still a rare disease, and there's not a lot out there. But that is happening, and I think it's wonderful that it's happening. So the more that we can educate doctors, especially, so they know what to do. We talk about
Even
it
to
all the
look
time.
for it.
I had a paragraph of porphyria in medical school, and I've never seen a patient since. There's a gastroenterologist in our building, that we in Bradenton, and when I met him for the first time, I said, "Oh, porphyria, would you like a doctor packet?" And he said, "No, I've never seen a patient. I'm never going to see anybody like that." It's fine. I said, "Okay, well, if you would change your mind, I've got a lot of information." And one thing that Dr. Smith said is that, him reaching out to dermatologists, right, Andrew, and hematologists, or other hematologists, hepatologists, saying, "Do you see patients like this?" Once he went out and started talking to his colleagues, at first they said, "No, we've never seen it." Now that he's asked about it, they think about it. One of our big things with Porphyria Awareness Week that we do in April every year is Think Porphyria. We try to just get the word out, like that conversation you had with your doctor. And what did Andrew, just tell us what he said about that? Do you remember what he said?
Yeah, I mean, I know it all started back when he was just asking them about that, asking all those doctors, and then he just kind of went down the results. I think, was it the hematologist and the dermatologist that were just explaining some of the symptoms, and he was like, "Send them to me,"
Yeah.
and that's
And once
really,
they heard, when I see this and I test it and it's normal, maybe it could be porphyria. I'll send them to Dr. Smith and get them tested. So it's awareness and education is number one. And you coming on here today, and you said it is a risk because it's not public information, and I really applaud you for that, because I know it's hard. It may seem like an obstacle, but you're just going for it and doing it, and it takes guts, it takes vulnerability, and it takes it's not easy, and a lot of people aren't able to do it. But I just really appreciate that you came on today, and have just been so transparent, and I think that people that are watching are going to just get so much out of listening to you and what you have to say in your journey. It's
Thank you. So
incredible.
let's
And
give them the fight. And what I actually love before we go is, can you just reiterate um, how people can be involved and how people can get the support from you?
absolutely, we so with Rarely Discussed, you can either comment, but basically what we do is we go back to getting to the American Porphyria Foundation, and you can reach us at general at porphyriafoundation.org. We're on we have Facebook support groups. Our website is porphyriafoundation.org, and you can join us, be a part of us. We can help you get those doctor packets out, get the doctors, be there to support you. Just anything that we can do, we will do. And we have so many programs. We have something called Porphyria Partners. So some people don't feel as supported in a big group if they're not someone that's really outgoing. They feel like they can't jump into a conversation sometimes. Not that it is hard, but for some people it feels like that, to have a one-on-one partner that they can, really talk to and be there, that really understands. Um, and we've got book club, we've got all these different ways that you can get involved, be with patients, even if you're not talking about porphyria. But if someone gets on and said, like when you just said, "Oh, I can't cry because I've got a podcast tomorrow," earlier today I was on the phone, I'm like, "I am in so much pain, but I can't take the pain medication because my voice goes like, ah, and I can't talk," and I'm like, "I'm gonna have to wait till afterwards." It's just, it's, I think, just being open like this, we're stronger together. And everyone has something to add. Even people that I one time on the Facebook support groups, I had asked for Porphyria Awareness Week, "Can you share your story?" And someone said, "I can't share my story. It hurts too much." that to me says a lot.
When we started this today, I thought, oh my God, am I going to be able to talk about this? I felt the emotion. I think there's something really important that we might be able to kind of wrap up with. Like I said, my mother was an extraordinary. She was beautiful, smart. She lost my father very. She was 38. She's been through a lot, and she was a therapist, and she was profound. She was brilliant. But towards the end, there was kind of nothing I could say about prayer, talking to angels, and there's nothing I could really say that would alter where she was. But I have a philosophy, and that is really that we are either have a pull towards death or we have a pull towards life. And that is really my essence. I want to live much more than I want to die.
Amen.
I want to find the answers much more than I want to say stuck, taking Dilaudid or whatever junk they put in your body. So I think the most inspirational thing I can say is that's a choice you make. Do you want to be pulled towards death or do you want to be pulled towards life? And if you want to be pulled towards life, then you got to join these groups. You got to find like people. And you can't come to the groups, you can, yet you have to come to the groups open to learn, open to cope, hoping to find some shred. Meeting you gave me, I'm not alone. There are answers. It doesn't have to be this way. And let that pull. Two magnets, death or life. And I want to live. So I hope that, that sentence in and of itself gives people a visual.
Yeah.
Where's the pull? I'm not going to allow this to define me. Period.
Well, good for you. You're really at the beginning stages. You're finding that there's a little bit of issues with insurance, getting your treatments and stuff like that, but you're going to do great.
Oh God, I hope so. I'm ready to get well, universe. Ready.
Put it out there.
I'm ready. So anything else, Andrew, Nicole? Anything else?
I would just say you're such a perfect person to have in this group. You're such a perfect person to have on this podcast because you have so much grit. And we're not even in person talking right now, but I can feel it right through this screen because it just radiates off you. And I think people really need to take notes to that fighting for yourself is so important. I mean, I think there's so many people out there where it's like, I don't want to yell at the doctor. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to do this. And it's like, who cares? It's for you at the end of the day. So I think if someone can learn just one thing from this, it's just get down and gritty like Shelly. I think that's it.
I like that.
And fight. Fight for what's rightfully yours, a good life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you both. You'll let me know how much more I can help and how to be involved. I hope I'm feeling better.
Absolutely.
Um,
And we're here for you when you have those times when you're down and you need to know you need someone there. I can proudly say what you just said earlier about that you felt heard and everything. That's why that's why I do this, what I do. And most every single person that I've met in this community feels the same way. They're even when they're in pain and suffering, they are there to lift everybody else up as much as they can, even if they're struggling with their own illnesses or they're not feeling well or whatever. And they're even if they're in an attack, not in an attack. And you are just such a wonderful addition. And
Thank you.
get gritty like Shelly. I like that.
Thank you both so much. We'll talk. I would love to see if you have a porphyria specialist in this area.
Yeah.
I really would like that. Not that my doctor isn't fabulous,
Oh, of course.
but he's admitted. He said, I don't really know it. I've only worked with like 6 patients. And he had to say that to me to be transparent. It's not that I really know a lot. And that's why he's hesitant about the panhematin. But I am going to work with the two of you, A, to support this initiative, and B, to see whatever else we can find.
Well, thank you.
All right, let's get well together.
Yes, you got it.
I like it.
All right. Bye, guys. I'll be
Bye-bye.
in touch. Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with friends, family, or anyone who could benefit. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your preferred platform. It helps us spread awareness, and we would be extremely grateful. You can also follow Rarely Discussed on Instagram, YouTube, as well as TikTok. If you're someone seeking diagnosis for porphyria, visit porphyriafoundation.org to receive a free doctor packet, forms for free DNA testing, and a list of doctors in your area. Stay tuned for more episodes of Rarely Discussed.